Liam, my wife, doesn't love me, and she doesn't love our child either. The day our son was born, she didn't even look at him and just tossed him into my arms. Later, her first love returned to the country. For the first time, the woman who had always been indifferent got drunk at home, laughing as she held our child in her arms. Our son happily wrapped his arms around her neck and quietly asked me, "Dad, what happened to Auntie?" I crouched down and hugged him, my eyes red as I explained, "She's happy because the person she likes came back, so we shouldn't disturb her anymore. We're going to move out." I took our son back to the room to sleep, then went to the guest room and opened my laptop to begin drafting the divorce agreement. This year marks the 7th year since Lena and I got married, and it's the 7th year we've been living apart. Now, I've finally decided to let her go. Knock, knock. I opened the door and my 7-year-old son, holding a toy airplane, found me. "Dad, are we really moving out?" He looked at me with a gaze full of reluctance. "But Annie hugged me tonight. Does that mean she's starting to like me?" I paused for a moment, feeling a bit dazed. 7 years of marriage, and Lena never let our son call her mom. When he was 2, she took him to the supermarket and they ran into an acquaintance. Because our son accidentally called her mom, she put her son, who had just learned to walk, on the ground, letting him walk home by himself. By the time they got home, he didn't even know how many times he had fallen. His knees and hands were all scraped up. At 4 years old, our son begged her for a long time before she agreed to take him to the amusement park. But once again, because of a careless mom from our son, Lena let go of his hand. She let a 4-year-old child get lost in the crowd. When they found him, he was hiding in a bush, crying so hard he could barely breathe. From that moment on, our son started calling her Auntie, and our family became a joke. Thinking about this, my nose burned, and I couldn't help but pull him into my arms. "Tim, Auntie's crush is coming back, and we can't stay in this house anymore." His eyes dimmed, but he quickly brought the toy airplane in front of my eyes again. "But Dad, Auntie gave me a gift tonight. If she doesn't like me, why would she give me a gift?" His expression was so eager, desperately trying to prove that he was the child she liked. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say a word. What could I say? How could I say it? Should I tell him that Lena is happy because her crush is returning? Or should I tell him that this gift is because of another man? I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I just swallowed the bitterness and sorrow in my heart, and, like before, protected my child with a fabricated truth. I kissed his forehead, wiping away the tears in my eyes where he couldn't see. This was the illusion a father would go to great lengths to maintain, even when it hurt the most. Suppressing the urge to sob, I smiled and spoke. "Tim, if Dad wants to take you away from Auntie, would you be okay with that?" My son stiffened for a moment, then softly said, "Can't we stay? I haven't even had the chance to call her mom yet." I couldn't hold back the tears anymore, and I bit my lip hard. "Tim, Auntie, she doesn't want us to stay in her house. Dad will take you away, okay?" He pulled his hand back, clutching the airplane tightly to his chest. After a long silence, he said, "I want to give Annie 3 more chances. If she really doesn't like us, then we'll leave her forever." I closed my eyes and agreed to his request. "Okay, Lena, my son and I are giving you 3 more chances. After those 3 chances, there will be no place for you in this family ever again." Today is Friday, and it's the day Lena's first love returns to the country. They were college sweethearts, engaged shortly after graduation, but just a month before their wedding, Nicholas fell in love at first sight with a French woman. Without hesitation, he abandoned Lena and went to France to pursue true love. From then on, they went their separate ways. Lena sank into a deep depression for quite some time because of him. It was during that time that I became her assistant. After one drunken night, we had a child. I also became her underground husband, and my child and I were both disregarded by her. After printing the divorce agreement I drafted yesterday, I began preparing my resignation letter. Unlike my son, I had grown accustomed to Lena's cold-heartedness and would no longer foolishly wait for a wayward woman to come back. 7 years had been enough to dissolve all my illusions. "Leo, are you really going to resign?" A colleague glanced at my screen and whispered to me. I smiled and gave the response I had prepared long ago. "Yeah, my kid's mom is overseas. I'm planning to take him with me and reunite the family." The colleague nodded. "That makes sense. It's tough for you to raise a child alone here. You know, we all thought you were a single dad." Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh, though it was a bitter laugh. I wasn't a single dad, but I was worse off than one. My eyes started to sting, and I quickly put on a practiced smile, trying not to let anyone notice. After submitting my resignation, Lena walked in with Nicholas. The man walked ahead, his face adorned with a gentle smile. Lena followed behind him, her gaze never leaving him. A colleague nudged me and whispered, "Leo, did you see that? Our CEO Sue has finally found her iron tree blossoming." I forced a smile, and in my heart, it started to rain. It only takes a decade or more for an iron tree to bloom. But Lena, even if I waited a lifetime, I would never get her to look at me. As they passed by, I still couldn't resist calling out to her, "Sue." Before I could finish, the woman shot me a cold look. "Is there something?" Her distant words carried a warning for me to swallow whatever I was about to say, a warning to remember my place. I lowered my eyes, using all my strength to hide the redness in the corners of my eyes. "Sorry, CEO Sue." Lena gave a faint acknowledgement and immediately turned her gaze away. She continued to focus on Nicholas, as if he was her entire world. She was my wife, the mother of my child, yet here she was, unabashedly showing her love for another man in front of me. It was ironic and sobering. I smiled bitterly to myself. Originally, I had wanted to tell her I was resigning, but now it seemed unnecessary. After all, she had never cared. She never cared about my emotions, about our child, and she certainly didn't care about this marriage that was barely hanging on. Back at my desk, I received a call from my son on his kid's watch. "Dad, there's a parent meeting tonight, so we're getting out of school early. Finley brought me to find you." I froze for a moment and instinctively stood up to walk out. But just then, I saw Lena reaching out to fix Nicholas's hair not far off. My son stood, his little body frozen at the elevator, staring at his mom in intimate contact with a strange man. The patience both my son and I had had was seen before. I was about to pull him away when Lena noticed him. Her body stiffened, and she instinctively pulled her hand back. But in the next moment, she slowly but surely walked past our son, shielding Nicholas as if she didn't even know him. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest, and I hurriedly took my son back to my desk. Before I could explain, my son's eyes turned red and he asked me, "Dad, is that the man Auntie likes?" In that instant, I lost all the strength to speak, only able to nod with tears in my eyes. My son didn't ask any more questions. He quietly took out his homework and started writing, but the tears still soaked the paper. I held my son. He was my whole world. "Lena, after we leave, you have 2 chances left." After packing up, my son and I were ready to head home. On the way, my son asked me, "Dad, can Annie come to the parent meeting tonight?" In 7 years of marriage, Lena had never attended one of our son's parent meetings. Seeing the hopeful look in his eyes, I couldn't bring myself to refuse, so I sent Lena a message. "Our son has a parent meeting tonight. Are you free?" The message sent, and, as usual, it was met with silence. My son lowered his head, holding his backpack, and asked me, "She doesn't want to come, does she?" Then with a mature smile, he tried to act like it didn't matter. "It's okay. Auntie is busy. I understand." Hearing my son's thoughtful words, my chest felt like it was being crushed by a heavy stone, making it hard for me to breathe. Just as I was about to speak, my phone dinged. It was a message from Lena. "I'm free. I'll come." A surge of surprise filled my heart, and I couldn't wait to show my son the message. "Tim, look, Mom said she'll come." My son froze for a moment, then immediately broke into a big smile. In 7 years of marriage, this was the first time Lena had agreed to come to a parent meeting. With Lena's positive response, my son chatted all the way home, excitedly telling me how many times the teacher praised him, how many high marks he got, and how many awards he earned. He also mentioned he had been elected as class monitor for this semester, and the teacher promised to announce it at tonight's meeting. He then asked me, "Dad, if Mom knows how well I've been doing at school, she'll like me more, right?" I paused for a moment, and then my heart ached even more. I silently prayed that Lena wouldn't back out. Before we left, I hoped my son would get what he wished for, even if it was just for our own self-deception. The clock on the wall ticked, and the time for the parent meeting grew nearer, yet Lena still hadn't shown up. But Nicholas's WeChat moments had been updated. In the photo, the woman was sitting next to an unfamiliar little boy, teaching him how to build with Lego. The caption read, "Future good mom." I turned my head and looked into the living room. My 7-year-old son sat quietly on the couch, playing with toys. The same Lego, the same age, the same need for companionship, but he had never had Lena as his mother. Sensing my gaze, my son seemed to understand something. He cautiously asked me, "Dad, is Mom busy again?" I stared blankly into his eyes, unable to tell him the truth. His mother wasn't busy. She was with another little boy, wasn't she? I couldn't say a word, so I did what I had done so many times before. I pulled my son into my arms and told him, "It's okay. You still have your dad. Dad will always be with you." My son, understanding, didn't ask any more questions, but his eyes couldn't help but redden. On the way to school, neither of us mentioned Lena. It was as if she had never made any promises, and this family had always been just the two of us. "You have one chance left." After parking the car, I held my son's hand and walked into the school. But when we stepped into the classroom, I froze in place. Mom, Lena was sitting by the window. At the sound of our voices, she instinctively looked over at us, her pupils shrinking. "You're here." The surprise in her tone made me stop in my tracks, and a bad premonition rose in my heart. My son had been in elementary school for 6 months, and yet Lena didn't even know the name of his class. My son didn't hear clearly and excitedly ran to her side. "Mom, you..." Lena frowned. "What did you call me?" My son's expression froze for a moment. Then he quickly changed his. "Auntie, you're sitting in the wrong seat. My seat is in the front." He looked at Lena, his eyes full of happiness. This was the first time Lena had come to a parent meeting and the first time she had kept her promise. But this excitement didn't last long. The next second, Lena avoided his gaze. "I'm not in the wrong seat. This is my seat." My son paused, about to say something, but was knocked aside by a figure. "Move aside, this is my Sue mom." Out of paternal instinct, I immediately pulled my son into my arms. Lena also instinctively stood up, but upon meeting Nicholas's surprised gaze, she froze. She withdrew her hand and shielded the boy behind her, stiffly saying, "Sonny didn't mean it." I apologized for him. Both my son and I were stunned. This kind of protection, this kind of care, my son had never received. "Who is he?" I stood up and asked softly. Lena froze for a moment. After meeting my eyes, a hint of guilt flashed across her gaze. "A friend's child." "Is that so?" I muttered to myself. But deep down, I knew this was the same boy from the photo with Nicholas. The child Lena was willing to spend time with. Sure enough, the next second, Nicholas came in with a bottle of water. Upon seeing us, he seemed surprised. "Leo, the assistant, are you here to accompany your child to the parent meeting? Why isn't the child's mom here?" I instinctively looked at Lena, but only saw her avoiding my gaze. I understood now. She was afraid I would expose her. In a daze, I seemed to be transported back to the day Nicholas returned to the country. That day, the usually cold woman got drunk for the first time. It was also the first time she smiled when she heard our son call her mom. My son and I thought we were finally going to get the happiness we had been waiting for. The next second, the name Lena mumbled was Nicholas's. That's when I realized she had mistaken him for someone else. I tightened my grip on my son's hand, about to speak, but my son spoke first. "My mom is not in the country. She's really busy. I don't want to disturb her." Those words left both of them stunned. I lowered my head in disbelief. All I saw was my son's slightly red eyes. He looked at Lena and tried his best to force a mature smile. "Sue auntie, Dad and I will leave now." At that moment, all the sadness clogged in my chest as I turned to leave. Lena suddenly grabbed my arm. "What did Tim just say?" Lena stared at our son as if confirming something. Was it because the child whom she had once tried so hard to push away had now learned to avoid her on his own? I tugged at the corner of my mouth, finding it strangely ironic. "He didn't say anything. A mess, Sue. The parent meeting is about to start." I gently pulled her hand away and led my son to the front to take a seat. Even after sitting down, I could still feel the burning gaze behind me. But no matter how intense the gaze was, it couldn't warm my heart. The parent meeting started on time. I held my son close, wishing for the teacher's voice to be harsher for the first time, hoping it would block out the warm conversations of that family of 3 behind us. As expected, my son was singled out by the teacher, announced as the class monitor for the semester, and asked to speak on stage. But my son refused. He didn't want to go up, nor did he want to speak. I knew why. He didn't want to see Lena sitting next to that other child. He didn't want to admit that his mother would rather accompany someone else's child to a parent meeting than be with him. He didn't want to openly call her mom. Afterward, I took my son to the teacher's office to process his withdrawal from school. As we left the school, we ran into Lena waiting by the road. She had been standing there for a while, holding a cotton candy in her hand. "Why are you so late?" "Let's go home together," Lena said, handing the cotton candy to my son. "Together? Home?" Once, this was the scenario my son and I looked forward to most, but now, hearing it, it only felt ironic. My son reached out and took the cotton candy from Lena, his gloomy face finally breaking into a smile. Seeing his expectant look, my heart softened. I was about to agree when I heard her say, "Nicholas's child is a transfer student, so he didn't participate in the class leader competition before. Maybe you could have your son tell the homeroom teacher that he won't be class monitor this time, and let Sonny have the opportunity instead." Casual words made both my son and me feel cold inside. Sure enough, all gifts come with an unspoken price. Just like this cotton candy. It, too, had a cost. "Okay, Sue Auntie," it was my son's voice. With red eyes, he put the cotton candy into his mouth. Lena's expression softened slightly. Just as she was about to take my son's hand, her phone rang. It was Nicholas. "Lena, Sonny's not feeling well. Can you come find us now?" Lena's expression changed instantly, and she turned to get into the car. As she closed the car door, my son suddenly shouted loudly, "Mom!" Lena froze for a moment, her hand still on the door as she looked out at my son's reddened eyes. After a long silence, she finally said, "Take care." This time, she didn't ask him to call her anything else, but that was the last time my son would ever call her mom. That night, my son and I packed our bags and booked our tickets abroad. We didn't mention Lena again. The living room would no longer have a light burning through the night, waiting for her. The next morning, my son and I left with our luggage, checking in and boarding the plane. Before I turned off my phone, I sent Lena one last, "I wish you happiness." The next moment, the chat box, which had been silent for so long, suddenly vibrated wildly. My finger hovered over the power button, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. Tim noticed my hesitation. He glanced at the screen, and his eyes instantly reddened. He tugged at my sleeve and lowered his head, speaking in a muffled voice. "Dad, we should go now." I gently ruffled his hair, feeling a pang in my heart as I realized how quickly he was growing up. At the company, Lena stared at the shut-down notification on the screen, her brow furrowing tighter. Yesterday, she had rushed over only to find that Sonny had been crying for KFC because he was hungry. She thought of Tim, whom she had left behind, and a trace of guilt arose in her heart. That meal, Sonny had enjoyed so much. Today, if she took Tim to KFC, he would probably be just as happy. "Lena." Nicholas's voice interrupted her thoughts. Lena looked at Nicholas, dressed in a transparent neck-black shirt, and frowned slightly. Leo had a great physique, but he always wrapped himself up tightly and never dressed like that. Noticing her brief distraction, Nicholas thought she was attracted to his looks, so he leaned in a little closer. "The client has arrived, and the shareholders are here. Let me accompany you this time." The strong scent of roses wafted from him, and Lena sneezed a few times. Nessa was allergic to perfume, and after I learned that, I gave away all my cologne and even switched my shampoo to a mild tea fragrance. Yet Nicholas, her ex-fiancé who had been with her for years, had completely forgotten. Lena silently moved away from him, then stood up and walked toward the meeting room. She had promised to let Nicholas return to the workforce, and this was the perfect opportunity to let him officially appear in front of everyone. She also wanted to take this chance to show the others that Nicholas was under the protection of Sue, the company president. Seeing that Lena had given her silent consent, Nicholas followed her in. In the meeting room, everyone had been eagerly discussing the male model secretary they had seen in the CEO's office. But as soon as Lena entered, the room fell silent. Lena pretended not to notice and opened a document on the table. Just one glance, and her brow furrowed. The others also looked at their documents with varying expressions. Every single document had watercolor stains on it, with the crooked word "agree" scribbled in what was clearly a child's handwriting. Lena threw the documents down onto the table, her tone cold. "Who prepared these? Do you have any basic work competence?" Department heads exchanged looks, all silent. These documents had been forwarded to the CEO's office and printed by the secretary. Even if there was a problem, it couldn't be blamed on them. Lena's expression darkened as she scanned the room, then coldly threw out a command. Call Leo here. The HR director, looking troubled, spoke up. President Sue Leo. Before he could finish, the client interrupted him, slamming the documents onto the table. President Sue, if this is the attitude of your company, then we have no need to cooperate anymore. Everyone's gaze fell on the documents, and they saw that on the client's name, someone had drawn a crooked turtle and written a few insulting words. Lena's face turned ashen. She never imagined the men she trusted would cause such a huge mess for her. Alexander, looking wronged, tearfully, I'm sorry. I didn't expect. But the client was having none of it, retorting, What are you? I'm talking to your CEO. Lena rubbed her aching forehead and stood up to apologize. Sorry, this is my oversight. I'll arrange for a new contract immediately, and as an apology, we're willing to lower the price by another 3%. The client remained silent, calculating the value of their own face. Nicholas, still looking heartbroken, started crying, his tearful face making the others frown, no longer showing any sympathy. In the professional world, appearance might count for something, but these people valued competence above all. Unlike Leo, who not only looked good, but was 100 times more capable than him. They couldn't understand why President Sue would choose to keep this vase-like man by her side instead of someone like Leo. After everyone left, Nicholas, with red eyes, looked at her. Lena, I'm sorry. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. What should I do? Lena instinctively felt the need to comfort him, but when she met his pitiful gaze, she froze. Leo had never looked at her like that. He was proud. His work was always perfect. No matter how difficult the task, he could handle it with ease, unlike Nicholas, who just cried and dumped all the mess on her to fix. If it had been Leo, no, it wouldn't have happened. He was so attentive, and Tim was so well-behaved. He would never. As she thought about this, Lena's heart ached, but her gaze gradually turned cold. When she looked back at Nicholas, she had regained her composure. Leave now. Don't get involved in the rest of this. Nicholas hesitated, seeming taken aback by Lena's distant attitude. Lena, leave? Lena's patience had run out, and her tone was cold. Nicholas bit his lip, but in the end, he unwillingly turned and left. Lena collapsed helplessly into her chair, her mind flooded with countless memories. 7 years ago, I stood out among a group of excellent candidates and was personally chosen by Lena to be her assistant. Back then, I was just a rookie with no identity, no background, and an unremarkable appearance. I couldn't even understand the most basic professional terms used in contracts. Many people in the company gossiped that I was just another man living off a woman. To prove my worth and stand proudly beside her, I could only work myself to the bone. I would ask senior colleagues for advice, even though they looked at me with disdain. I always carried a notebook, jotting down all the details of her preferences and everything she liked. I spent my evenings teaching myself French, German, and even Esperanto. I strove to be her reliable assistant, always ready to help at a moment's notice. At business dinners, I could quickly recite everyone's preferences. I effortlessly helped her navigate difficult clients. No matter the time, as long as she needed me, I would be there by her side. Gradually, I became someone she couldn't live without. I also became a constant presence in both her work and personal life. Everyone envied Lena for having a golden assistant like Leo, and she herself was very pleased to have such a capable aide. Unfortunately, everything fell apart that one night. I went from being her prized assistant to them, and she saw as nothing more than a manipulative schemer trying to get into her bed. All my efforts were seen as mere tactics to get closer to her. The admiration she once had for me was now replaced by utter disdain. She didn't even care about our child anymore. She must have thought that if Nicholas had been the one by her side, her life would have turned out differently. Now, she had her wish, but as she thought about today, a pang of regret struck her. She thought about Nicholas's gaudy appearance today, so far removed from the men she once loved, but could never have. Suddenly, she realized that her feelings for him might have already changed. Maybe she had loved. Lena rubbed her forehead, trying to push away this absurd thought. But without meaning to, Tim's face appeared in her mind. She could stop loving me, but the child was innocent. With this thought, Lena took out her phone and quickly typed a message. Pack up. I'll pick you up tonight. Perhaps noticing how stiff her tone was, she frowned and changed it. Let's take Tim to KFC tonight. Lena read it twice, took a deep breath, and pressed send. The whole afternoon passed, but there was no response to her message. Lena repeatedly picked up her phone, only to put it down in disappointment each time. Nicholas brought her a cup of coffee and quietly spoke. Lena. Lena stared at the blank screen, not even bothering to look up. Her voice was tinged with an irritation she hadn't even realized. Put it down and leave. And from now on, call me President Sue at the company. Even though I brought you in, you need to be cautious and avoid any misunderstandings. Nicholas's eyes welled up with tears, but they remained unshred, making him look pitiful. Lena glanced up slightly, frowning before picking up the internal phone and calling her secretary. Nicholas is still getting used to his first day, so please arrange for him to rotate through the departments. After the probation period, he can come back. Nicholas was taken away, still looking pitiful, no longer stirring any emotion in Lena. As the workday came to a close, Lena still hadn't received any reply from me. Yet this time, she was oddly patient. Maybe because she remembered how she used to be left behind every time they went out. She took the initiative this time. She stood in line for half an hour at KFC and bought everything to go. She would remember Tim's favorite flavors as long as he ate them. When she excitedly opened the door to the house, the large living room was empty. There were no signs of Tim's building blocks on the carpet, nor was I in the kitchen preparing dinner. Lena headed for the kitchen. She opened the fridge and took out a can of cola. As she closed the door, she noticed that the fridge door was covered with stickers of all sizes. Most of them were family photos. Lena felt a sharp pang in her heart because Tim's artwork didn't have a picture of his mother. It suddenly reminded her of the first time Tim had asked her to model for him. He had carefully brought his drawing board to her and asked, "Mom, could you be my?" And back then, how had she responded? With a stern face, not even looking up from her phone as she texted Sonny, she had replied dismissively, "I'm busy, no time." Thinking back on it, Lena was overwhelmed by an inexplicable wave of frustration and regret. It's fine. Next time Tim asks, she thought. She wouldn't turn him down. Lena placed the food neatly on the table, then glanced at her phone. It had been 10 minutes since Tim's kindergarten had finished, and according to the route home, I should have arrived in 5 minutes. She nervously arranged the fries and carefully squeezed ketchup in the shape of a heart on the white plate. Once everything was ready, she sat down at the table, anxiously staring at the door. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes passed. The door and phone remained silent. Lena felt as though her heart was being silently torn by an invisible hand. She was anxious and uneasy. Finally, half an hour later, there was a soft knock at the door. Lena joyfully walked toward the door. "Tim, guess what Mommy has prepared for you?" Before she could even say the word surprise, Lena's smile froze on her face. "You guys are here for what?" At the door, Nicholas was awkwardly holding Sonny's hand. Hearing the cold tone in Lena's voice, he sulkily replied, "Sonny knows she's made a big mistake and insisted on coming to personally apologize to you. I also have some work-related questions I want to ask Leo, since he used to." Lena saw the red, tear-streaked faces of the father and son. Not wanting to face the curious looks from the neighbors, she reluctantly moved aside and let them in. Sonny immediately noticed the KFC on the table. She was about to reach for it when Nicholas's sharp glance made her flinch. Lowering her head, she said in a pitiful voice, "Sue, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have drawn on your documents." Looking at Sonny's guilty expression, Lena's heart softened slightly. Tim often looked at her with those same eyes. Thinking of her son, she suddenly felt uneasy. It had been so long. Why hadn't Leo and Tim come home yet? Lena ignored the father and son, picking up her phone and walking into the kitchen. She tried calling me again, but my phone was still off. Her lips pressed tightly together as she hesitated for a moment before calling the company, preparing to ask about my unexplained absence. Then, a loud crash came from the living room. Lena rushed out and saw Sonny standing on the remaining base of the Lego set, small blocks scattered all over the floor, turning the entire living room into a chaotic mess. Nicholas shouted at her, which scared Sonny into dropping the half-eaten egg tart on the floor. She ran toward Lena, crying. In the past, whenever she made a mistake and her father wanted to scold her, Lena would step in to protect her like a mother would. Sonny thought this time would be no different. However, This time, they were both mistaken. Lena took out her phone, snapped a few pictures, and quickly sent them to her lawyer. She then coldly delivered an ultimatum. The damages caused today and subsequent compensation will be handled by my lawyer. Now please leave my house. Nicholas looked at her with disbelief, his voice laced with grievance. Lena, it's just a toy. Can't Sonny apologize to Tim and we'll call it even? Lena glanced at the broken pieces on the floor, her voice light, but sending a chill down Nicholas's spine. This was Tim's prize for winning the Lego competition. There's only one in the world. Do you really think an apology will fix this? Nicholas was speechless, but Sonny, not willing to back down, shouted, I'm not apologizing. Why should I apologize to the child of a mistress? Lena's eyes widened in shock. What did you just say? Before Nicholas could cover her mouth, it was too late. Sonny crossed her arms, standing defiantly in front of Lena. Tim's dad is the mistress's partner. Tim is a child of a mistress. If he hadn't shamelessly seduced you, you should have been my mom. Lena's face darkened, her expression as if she could melt the room with her cold stare. She suddenly remembered the parent-teacher meeting, when Tim had excitedly called her mom, and she had harshly stopped him, forcing him to correct himself. She had never thought about how much harm such actions would cause her son. But now, hearing those words from a group of children, how much pain would they cause? No wonder I had looked so angry that day. No wonder Tim's gaze toward her had been filled with disappointment. What had she done? Frustration and regret flooded her chest, and in a fit of rage, Lena grabbed Sonny by the collar and dragged her to the door, tossing her onto the ground. Nicholas rushed out, picking Sonny up and tearfully accusing Lena. Lena, you can be angry at me, but the child is innocent. Lena's mind replayed countless times my desperate pleas. Lena, you can misunderstand me all you want, but the child is innocent. Could you show her some motherly love? She then remembered that proud man, the one who never softened when she misunderstood him, never softened when she neglected him. The only time he ever softened was because of the child. In a burst of anger, Lena called security to have them thrown out, then started calling the company furiously. When the phone finally connected to the HR director, her anger was nearly uncontrollable. Hello. The noise on the other end of the line was loud, and through the receiver, Lena could hear the HR director gently comforting a child. Mom is busy with work. Can you wait a little while so we can play with Legos later? The child's soft voice echoed from the other side. Mommy, hurry or the big monster will take over your room. The HR director chuckled and then moved to a quieter spot, sounding puzzled. President Sue, what's wrong? Lena's emotions froze as she recognized the gentle tone on the other end. She shook herself out of her stupor, clearing her throat awkwardly. What's the reason Leo's absent today? The HR director paused, then quickly responded, Leo has resigned. What? Lena exclaimed in shock, her fists tightening in disbelief. The HR director hurriedly clarified. He submitted his resignation letter early the day before yesterday. He said his wife is on a business trip abroad, and he wants to take his son to reunite with his family. He won't be coming back. Lena gritted her teeth, her voice sharp as a knife. Why wasn't I informed of such an important matter? The HR director hesitated. President Sue, you had mentioned that Leo was just an ordinary assistant. Now, according to company policy, his resignation didn't require your high-level approval. I saw how determined Leo was, so I processed his resignation according to procedure. Was there a problem? Lena clenched her hand tighter, nearly on the edge of laughing bitterly. How was it that she hadn't known Leo had a wife abroad? Just as she was about to explode, the voice of a child suddenly came through the phone. Mom, why aren't you here yet? The HR director's comforting voice followed. Almost, sweetie. Wait for mommy to finish her call, okay? It seemed that no matter what, every adult's voice turned gentle and soothing when they spoke to a child. Lena stood there in a daze, listening to the voice from the phone, her mind involuntarily wandering back to Tim. Actually, she had a perfect family. It just seemed she had lost it. With a heavy heart, she walked into the guest bedroom, a place she hadn't stepped foot in 7 years. Everything was just as it had been before I came into the picture, except for one thing. There was a divorce agreement on the table. She flipped through the clauses, which clearly laid out my demands. The usually stoic woman's eyes reddened. She never expected that the greedy man in her heart would choose Tim over the family and choose to leave her too. Lena didn't go to the office that day. Instead, she arrived early, waiting outside the kindergarten gates. She waited for me to smile and bring Tim to school. Unfortunately, from morning till night, she waited all day but didn't see either me or Tim. When school ended, Sunny ran out, immediately spotting Lena's Rolls Royce. Just as she was about to do as she usually did, climb into the car with the envious eyes of the other kindergarten children on her, Lena yanked her down. "Where's Tim? Did you see him today?" Sunny glared at Lena, responding with a disdainful tone. "No. Maybe he realized he's the child of a mistress and didn't dare come to school." As Nicholas arrived, he saw the tense standoff between the two. His unease deepened. Just the day before, he had received 2 documents the moment he arrived home: a termination notice and a lawyer's letter. He had thought that he had successfully won back Lena's heart, but little did he know she had already been taken by me and Tim. She just wouldn't admit it. When the principal found out Lena's identity, her attitude shifted from surprise to disdain. Her words grew harsher. "It's the first time I've seen someone so eager to play mother to another woman's child. Every time there's a parent-teacher meeting, the other kids mocked him for not having a father. I honestly thought his mother had passed away. Tim's father has already handled his withdrawal from school. I've got nothing more on file except these certificates he didn't take with him." Lena stood at the kindergarten gate, holding a thick stack of certificates, tears streaming down her face. She finally realized she had lost not just her reliable husband, but also her excellent son. The next time I saw Lena was at Tim's art exhibition. Over the years abroad, I had intentionally cultivated Tim's interest in painting. Despite his young age, he had already become a well-known young artist in the industry. This time, he was invited to bring his artwork back to the country for a charity auction, with all the proceeds to be donated to an orphanage, as he wished. As soon as the auction started, all of Tim's paintings were snapped up at high prices by a single buyer. I had a faint feeling of what was to come. Sure enough, during the segment where the artist thanked the buyers, we saw Lena. She had aged considerably since the last time we met. Her clothes were wrinkled, and the corners of her eyes had deepened with new lines. Yet, despite everything, she was still beautiful. She stared at us, frozen as she awkwardly accepted the flowers Tim handed her. During the hug, I heard her, "I'm sorry, Tim. Mommy lost you. Can you give me another chance?" Tim's body stiffened for a moment before he quickly distanced himself from her, offering a polite smile. "Thank you, Auntie, for your donation. I also hope you'll continue to support charity and help more children find their mothers." Lena looked at Tim, her eyes filling with tears once again. But what use was this late affection? Lena's harm would forever be a scar in Tim's heart. Even if Tim could forgive her, I would never forgive her easily. After the charity auction, Lena followed us to our home abroad. When the doorbell rang, I wasn't surprised to see the guilty, uneasy look in Lena's eyes. She stood at the doorstep, looking at me seriously. I never agreed to the divorce. It was my fault in the past, and I've reflected on it many times over these years. I want to have my family back. Please give me a formal chance to pursue you again. I rarely stayed silent, but after a long pause, I finally let her inside. I knew Tim still cried and called for his mother at times, but as he grew older, he had learned to hide his feelings. He was afraid of hurting me and never mentioned her again. A month later, Lena knocked on my door again. "I've transferred all my business overseas. I will work hard to be a good mother from now on." I exchanged a look with Tim, and we both smiled. I believed this time she would.